There are really there are some deep truths that really came to me when I was going through this chapter, and I hope that we shall share a few insights of what we got. You know, so when I came to the topic, to the inexperienced, I asked myself, in what or about what? Just by the mere reading of the topic itself, to the inexperienced, in what? Basically, you know, then I just begin by reading the first paragraph. Some I saw have not a realizing sense of the importance of the truth or of its effect, and moving from the impulse of the moment or from excitement, often follow their feelings and disregard church order. Some seem to think that religion consists chiefly in making a noise. Some who have just received the truth of the third angel's message are ready to reprove and teach those who have been established in the truth for years and who have suffered for its sake and felt its sanctifying power. Those who are puffed up by the enemy will have to feel the sanctifying influence of the truth and obtain a realizing sense of how it found them wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I'll first stop there. This takes me straight to the book of Revelation, chapter 3, where we see that among the seven churches, where each church is receiving an account, this message comes straight to the Laodicean church, which we understand is the current era, is the current stage where we are today, and it's particularly, more specifically, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And what do we read from that verse? Basically, looking at the context of the Laodicean church, Christ tells us that you guys are saying that you are rich, you are increased in goods, you are in need of nothing. And when we understand from the spiritual perspective, is that we look at the great spiritual wealth that we really have as the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as the Laodicean Church. Look at the spiritual prophecies that we have. Look at the great health messages that we have. How prophecy has been unveiled. There isn't any other church that is able to disintegrate prophecy to the greatest, clearest extent, just like the Seventh Adventist Church. And particularly, looking at the paragraphs I've just read, we are looking at the third angel's message. And what does it say? In Revelation chapter 14, if any man worship the beast and his image, the same and receive his mark, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God that is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And we are being told that how do we take out this message when we first received it? I'm also reminded about the experience of John when he receives this book and is asked to chew it. There is another prophet, I think it's Isaiah or Jeremiah. Wait, I think it's Isaiah. God gives him the scroll. It's Jeremiah or Isaiah. He gives him the scroll. He asks him to eat it. It is sweet in the mouth, but bitter in the belly. The sweetness of the gospel is that kind of great experience and that happiness that we really have that we can't wait to take it out. I won't comment about the bitterness in the belly that is felt, but looking at the context that we have, when we have these truths and we hold them so supreme, and then we begin judging others basically, and not having it, not taking out this truth in love, is the problem that we are having here. And to the inexperienced in what? In taking out the gospel, in handling the truth. I request kindly you to share what are some of your thoughts in how we handle the truth as we take it out to the rest, especially when we've just received it. we're usually very happy, very glad, which is very okay. But we immediately seeing the rest as people that do not deserve, as people that are terrible sinners. I mean, for example, one of the most controversial aspects, not really controversial, but one of the hottest topics with the SDA Church is the health message. Is the health message. We have a clear, thus saith the Lord, at least from the both from the greater light and the lesser light, about how we must transform our feeding habits to the glory of God, which is okay. But how we take out this message and how we behave when we first received it without putting into context how the Lord would love to guide us in taking it out to the rest of the world. That's where the issue comes from. Let me hear from what Marvin and Gideon have to say. Yes.
It's an interesting one because having lived through that experience, it's,
Mm,
it's interesting how there's a bit of a caution I think that has to be emphasized to all people, especially when you get to learn these truths. I also want to assume
mhm,
that it's
mhm,
could be also related to the way it's, I don't know, the way it's presented sometimes. But yes, there's that bit of
mhm,
when so the truth is the truth, but then you think that you're rich and increased with goods. You think that the truth, just by having or knowing the truth, that sort of makes you maybe justified before God, or it makes you feel like how the Laodiceans feel just because of you're holding all this gold and stuff like that. It makes you think that you're rich, but the reality is that the the knowledge itself is not. I don't know if this statement is right. I think our the salvation is in not trusting in ourselves, but trusting in what Christ has done for us and what Christ is doing and will do for us, not what we can do for ourselves. In the sense that, as an example of like keeping the health message, it's not what justifies us. So yeah, I think it's a tricky
mhm,
thing
mhm,
having lived
mhm,
through that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Then I've just thought about it now, how the Bible says in Revelation 3 that these people say, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing. Oh, I think that's too bold, where you reach that point where you think that uh, you're the epitome and everyone else ought to follow you, right? You have need of nothing, right? I think that's too bad a state to be in.
Hello, Gideon. Have we lost you?
No, I think that's it. You could continue. Maybe
Okay, okay,
Brother
okay,
Martin has something. Maybe.
okay. Maybe Brother Marvin gets have anything. If you're able to drop maybe also in the chat section. Yeah, and this brings me to my next question, that is in line with the next phrase. When the truth begins to purify them and purge away their dross and sin, and sin, I think dross and sin, but I see a tin, as it surely will when it is received in the love of it. The one who has this great work done for him will not fail, that he is rich and increased in goods, and has need of nothing. Those who profess the truth and think they know it all before they have learned its first principles, and who are forward to take the place of teachers and reprove those who for years have stood stiffly for the truth, plainly show that they have no understanding of the truth and know none of its effects. Just like Brother Gid, you've really emphasized that we put ourselves as a standard to the others because of the truth we have gained. Let me ask, what should be the impact, looking at the paragraph that I've just read, what should be the impact of the truth on our hearts if we if it doesn't paint the picture, if we cast aside the aspect of I'm rich, increase in goods, I am need of nothing. When we begin to behold ourselves as wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked, what should be the impact on us when we receive the truth and our attitude in taking it out? Yeah.
Um, I think that's a very wonderful question. The first thing I'd say, our attitude towards the
Mm,
thing, as you said, the the truth, just like love, does not
mhm,
make us
mhm,
puffed up. Rather, the
mhm,
truth makes us humble.
mhm. True.
It's it's a good example is actually the health message.
Mhm,
The health message, well analyzed, you most likely you'll find that all of us are beaten down flat by not living to the
mhm.
standards of a health message.
Very true. In its entire context and
Yes,
all the details captured. Yeah.
and you find that we live, we are entirely dependent on grace,
Mhm,
entirely dependent on the grace of God, because there are also so many other things that we are not able to satisfy in terms of health. You're not entirely, or you're not going to be able. Canada, there's so much smoke right now, so you're not going to entirely be able to say you're having fresh air. But
mhm,
there's so much smoke because of forest fires and stuff like that. You get like that. So there are so many things you cannot control to the dot.
mhm,
Where your food comes from, or all that stuff. So you find yourself not. Sometimes you don't necessarily sleep at the same time or wake up at the same time. You find yourself sleeping less, sleeping. So when you actually analyze, it really is supposed to bring us humility. Um,
mhm,
the passage here quoted, I think, is James chapter 3, and I think it's perfect in bringing this whole argument out.
mhm,
Um, where he says, "Who is wise and endued with knowledge among you?" I'm reading James chapter 3, verse 13 to 18.
mhm,
Who is wise and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out a good conversation, his works
mhm.
with meekness of wisdom.
Wisdom.
So he's saying, if you want to identify a real wise person and who has knowledge, you will notice how they have a good conversation with their actions, their works, whatever they do, and they have meekness of wisdom. And he says, but if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, bitter envying, there's this envy of, jealousy or something, strifes, there are
Mhm,
battles, debates in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the
Mhm.
wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of
Full of
mercy
mercy.
and good fruits, without
Mhm.
partiality and without hypocrisy.
Mhm.
You know, using the health message as an example, this wisdom really makes us pure, right? It's a
Mhm.
pure, the truth is pure, right? But
Yeah.
it
It
makes
is.
us, it's the idea is we become more peaceable. I remember me and my brothers back then, we had this issue that we were becoming more argumentative after we had changed our diet and things like that than peaceable, because we were sort of engaging in so many of the strifes and debates and things like that. But after some
Mhm.
time, you start to be, by the sanctifying grace of Jesus Christ, more understanding, more merciful to people, understanding where they come from, understanding that it's not always easy for everyone. It's not always straightforward. You know, it's easy to be intruded, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Without hypocrisy is the case of, if you're not exercising well, then why are you stressing other people on nutrition? You get the point. Like you,
Mhm.
you have to balance the the laws of health. For instance, that's just using health message as an example, but this applies to much more. You could talk about the Sabbath or all these other wonderful things. The fruit of
Yeah.
righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. And I think that's why she says, for if they knew any sanctifying power, they should yield the peaceable fruits of righteousness and be
Mhm.
humbled under its sweet, powerful influence.
Mhm.
Yeah. And go on, just
Oh, thank you, Brother Gid, for that exposition. You've really taken us through the details of the book of James, chapter 3, from just verse 13 all the way, just speaking straight. It's really our message today. May the Lord give us that kind of wisdom, that wisdom that is from above, that is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be treated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. I pray that this escorts the message that we preach and the knowledge that God grants us, surely. Brother Marvin has also shared some straightforward truths that let me just read through. The truth has suffered more in the hands of those who think they know the truth than in the hands of the ignorant. Wow. But I wish Christians would read such verses and we think deeply about them. That's Romans chapter 10, verse 2 to 3. For I bear them according For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness, and going about establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. Many of us have a zeal not according to knowledge, and that has done far more harm against the truth than the ignorant about the truth have done against it. For the truth, I'm learning that the closer we come to God, the more we will see the challenges in our own lives. And that will humble us and also be able to deal with them from where they are. And I've seen that the best way to advocate our message, each the health message, is to live it in my own life. That's the best example in favor of Christianity. The strongest argument, I love that quote. Wow. The strongest argument in favor of the gospel is a loving and lovable Christian. Testimonies on Sabbath school work. page 115, 116. Thank you so much, Brother Marvin, for that powerful insight and sharing about what we are discussing. The strongest argument in favor of the gospel is a loving and livable Christian. Remember, NAFCO, we were reminiscing about and brainstorming about this quote, and the emphasis was, what are you going to do in times where, in situations or in places or in times where you're not able to speak the message? What are you going to do? And it came back exactly to this. How you are living out the message that you profess is an argument that no one can, like, it's the greatest argument you can ever have. And similar to the greatest testimony that we can ever have is our lives. Because no one can refute it. You've lived it, it's you. Are we loving Christians, and are we lovable Christians? And how is this love demonstrated as we give out the truth, as we disseminate the truth to the rest of God's children? So I will um, just mention something lastly, and we wrap up the morning sharing. There is another quote, and that let me just read the paragraph. That is, I saw that the remnant were not prepared for what is coming upon the earth. Stupidity, like lethargy, seemed to hang upon the minds of most of those who profess to believe that we are having the last message. My accompanying angel cried out with awful solemnity, get ready, get ready, get ready, for the fierce anger of the Lord is soon to come. His wrath is to be poured out, unmixed with mercy, and ye are not ready. Rend the heart and not the garment. A great work must be done for the remnant. Many of them are dwelling upon little trials, said the angel. Legions of evil angels are around you and are trying to press in their awful darkness that he may be ensnared and taken. It's deeper than we think, but at the same time, it's a solo message that actually is applying to us, especially at such a time. If this message came within that time, and the angel was emphasizing that the time is almost out, the remnant are not yet ready, the angels of darkness are doing their level best to limit the work of the gospel, and the legions of evil angels, and yet the remnants seem to be very unready. If it was like this by then, how much more do we think it is today? Advancement in tech, fine, it's in one or the other supporting the gospel. But how devastating are the effects from the negative side too? From the negative side too. As lives are being swept into oblivion and people are being brainwashed, this time not by not by human beings, but by AI, because there's some things you just need to type in as you to seek answers. Let me say, for example, from ChatGPT, and it will give you its answers. And there are people that are taking all these things as absolute truth. I mean, kindly share your thoughts about our readiness, we as the remnant, what we can do in these last moments and days, how we can render our hearts and not the garment, that we may be ready. And when the Lord has transformed our hearts, we can take out the gospel. Kindly, Marvin and Gideon, share your closing thoughts and then we shall see our way out here.
I think for me it was eye-opening to actually to hear the words legions of angels are around you trying to person the awful darkness that you may be inside and taken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that got me thinking because I think many times we don't dwell upon so much of the realization that it's actually a serious battle that God is calling us to put ourselves on His side, um,
Mm-hmm.
to be sanctified and not be lost in the things of the world. Eh?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I pray that the Lord would help us to actually throw
Mm-hmm.
ourselves on His side and to try and pull as many people from the church to throw ourselves on God's side.
Amen. 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 Every time we being admonished to look at all this in light of the great controversy, in when you open the curtain the other side, we are able to see that we are not merely fighting against flesh and blood, but against the principalities of darkness, these powers of darkness. And many of us sometimes think that we can fight these things on our own, doing this and that. And we forget that we have a great fighter that we need to call upon to help us in fighting, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. I mean, the heart in terms of giving it to God to purify it and sanctify it to a standard and state that He wants us to be. May the Lord be with us as we continue to meditate upon His word, in seeking how best we can surrender our heart and on the garments. I'll reference the garments to be our outward appearance. You know, we can deceive the world by our outside appearing and work on this and that, as we shall see in the next discussion. But we cannot lie to the Lord about the heart. He knows us from inside out, not outside in. In fact, He has both. He knows us both way, inside out, outside in. And so the Bible asks us, I think in the book of First Corinthians, don't you know, seek ye, don't you really know your hearts? Don't you really know? Of course we do. We do. When you come back to our moments of rest and thinking about the day, we know how terrible our hearts are. May we get ready. I was thinking about a question this morning, as there is some, I think it's a club nearby here. They're ever making a lot of noise for us, but at least it's far away. The voices are not that strong. But ask myself a question: if anything happened and something happened and maybe the club maybe has collapsed and people are inside, what is the final fate of all of them there? If the Lord called me to rest today, what would be my fate in the resurrection morning? As we think about these words, may the Lord be with us. Gideon, you can say something and then you pray for us, a closing prayer.
Get ready, get ready, get ready.
Mm. Mhm.
Let's pray.
Mhm.
Lord, we're humbled every time we come to these things. We thank you for the timeless and ever important, wonderful nature of the things that you have written for us for understanding. The counsel to us is to get ready. It was aired out so many years ago, but it should mean much more to us than it even meant then. Lord, the work of the third angel is granted to us. It's a work in our own hearts and a work in evangelism, Lord. Lord, I just simply ask that you may enable us to get ready, that we may not think and act of ourselves, but rather allow the truth to sanctify us and allow that truth to shine through us to all our neighbors. Be with everyone that was on this call. Guide us this week that we shine for you. This is my humble prayer for the mighty name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.